Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Elizabeth, owner and creator of D3M Labs, and I am here today with Kasia Musur, who is an expert in toxic leadership. And we are going to talk about the results of her study on experiences of toxic leadership in data. So, Kasia, tell me about yourself, how you got into toxicity and your exciting new venture, Vent.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. My name is Kasia. And I am the founder of Vent. I also run Light Up Germany, where we focus on human trafficking prevention. So in general, my whole professional life currently focuses on exploitation and prevention of toxic leadership. So how I got into the topic, so my background is in social science. I have a master's in social anthropology and in global crime, justice, and security. And this topic of justice and human dignity has always been very important to me. And I worked in many different fields, in different roles, in projects, in leadership development, HR, and now around 18 years into my working life. Last year in the summer, I decided to focus more on the toxic leadership because of the experiences I had myself and because of the stories I heard from other people. So this is how it started. I did the first interviews to validate the idea and to validate the demand. And that's how we also met, as you heard about the interviews I was doing, or you saw somewhere that I was building a team, and that's how we started talking. So and Vent is meant to be a place for people who experience toxic leadership, who work in unhealthy and unfair workplaces, so that there is no this isolation. And we also want to spread more awareness so that people recognize the red flags and can make educated decisions about the steps they take when they find themselves in these difficult situations at work.
Okay, great. So just to start out with, what is toxicity and what is toxic leadership?
Yeah, so toxicity in the context of toxic leadership is when a leader is consistently behaving in a way that is harmful to the people that they lead. So for them, it's more important how they are perceived. It's more important their personal glory and their personal profit over the well-being of the people that are working for them, and also over the success and success of the company sometimes. So this toxicity is behaviors that are meant to manipulate and control people, and they are very damaging to people's mental health, trickling down into their personal lives and also their physical health.
Yes, great. Thank you. And when we met, it was in this business plan contest, and I saw what you were doing. And I thought toxic leadership was so important to the D3M Labs community. And that's because I hear on a daily basis from data professionals in Berlin, in Germany, and also elsewhere about how they are coping with toxic leadership. Either they're dealing with it currently and they don't know how to get out of it, or they're dealing with the aftermath. So I thought it's a natural fit. And I thought it was really great when we had the conversation and you said that, hey, you could do a study about toxic leadership in data and and hear what my community and other people have to say about their experiences. And we could see what are the specific issues that data professionals deal with. So, and hopefully we could spur some conversation and get some answers and solutions for these people in the companies. So could you explain to me the study?
Yep. So as I said, I started with interviews just to validate the idea, and it was a random sample of people. And then we spoke and we decided to look specifically at the data community. So what I did differently with this study was of course, I was selecting people or advertising on LinkedIn for people from the data community to contact me, and then I would give them. It was a qualitative research, so I was just collecting their stories, listening to what experiences they had, and looking for patterns, looking for what is repeating in those stories and what pops up as as a common experience for the people. And the people who contacted me were members of the D3M Labs community, people in Berlin, but also people from around the world. So it was also not only quantitative data, but also qualitative data, startups, small businesses, also big ones, international organizations, NGOs, and governmental institutions. So the sample was comparatively diverse. It was around 20 people, so it was also quite small, but the pattern still showed up, and I think the findings will be quite interesting. Also, we had a finding that was quite specific to the data community, although majority of the patterns and the findings are fitting across the board in all industries and contexts that I've heard so far. And today it is over 100 interviews that I held with different people from different backgrounds. So yes, I can say that it's usually very, very similar stories across the board.
So, can you tell me some of the experiences you've heard and some of the overarching trends, and then some trends that you see that are specific to the data community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I have a number of experiences that people mentioned, and I will present them in no specific order of appearance. So definitely one of the main things was the hours and being overworked. It seemed people experienced a lot of not very well planned work, so the delivery was not straightforward, or the deadlines were not clear. People had to do a lot of corrections. People experienced that that the requirements were not clear. It was not clear what was the purpose of the data they were collecting, and then they were given instructions to present it in a different way or to deliver different kinds of results, which were frustrating to them. They also experienced no feedback culture. There was a lot of delays in their appraisals. It was not clear. They couldn't tell themselves whether they were doing a good job or not, because the feedback was so unclear or not present at all. Then the people also found that when they brought up concerns, they were often either not taken into account, or the reaction was quite negative. So there was people experienced also fear to speak up or try to improve processes or try to improve the way things were being done, which was also very frustrating. And there was no stability, no job stability. So there was insecurity, there was confusion, frustration, and this feeling of the work going to waste. If there is anything else, yes, the clients were more important than the employees. So people really felt like whenever that tied with the hours, with overworking and spending a lot of overtime on projects, it was basically dictated by the client. So the management didn't seem to be supportive of the employees of those teams, but it was more important to satisfy the client, even at the expense of the quality of work and health of the teams. Yeah, I think these were the main experiences.
Okay, thank you. And what were the perceived root causes of these experiences? because I think you did a really good job of describing what one experiences when one is in a toxic culture, no feedback, overwork, very poorly scoped work, and
Mhm.
a lot of the other things that you described. But if we take a step back, why do people think that that happened, and specifically within data?
Yeah, so I asked this was one of my follow-up questions to measure this, and I asked people what were their perceptions about this specifically in data, and the results came out also quite overarching, similar reasons as in any other type of business team or company. So I have 10 reasons, which are also not in an order of importance. So one was that they, in some companies, as I said, there were people from small companies and very big companies, so it was all dependent on the size of the company and the structures within. But the perceptions were that the reason for toxicity is that top leadership has all the power. There is no standalone HR. There is no one controlling what the leaders are doing and deciding. So they can choose who to listen to, which data they want to take on board or not, and what kind of people they tolerate or not tolerate. There was no one outside of the leadership team to turn to for support, and people felt that HR not standing alone and leadership having all the power contributed to that toxicity being in place. In qualitative research, that's number 3 now. In qualitative research, it was reported that majority of the leadership positions were taken by men, while a majority of the people delivering qualitative research was women. And this created a toxic situation or toxic environment because the women were also, they had families, they had different things going on in their lives, which were not taken into consideration when it came to the time of meetings or working times as well. So the fact that the men were in leadership positions and seemed not to empathize with the female perspective of what is needed in the workplace, that contributed to it as well. Number 4 was ineffective organizational structures, which created silos. So in some companies, it seemed like the data team is completely separate from the rest of the organization or from the teams that they're supposed to work together with. And there was no understanding what exactly is this data going to be used for, why are suddenly requests for changes coming in, and it was blamed on the lack of communication and not very well built structures. So that was number 5 as well, with the ambiguity and lack of communication. And number 6, so the spirit of the sector, especially in the tech, but also in qualitative research, it was brought up that there is this need for speed and that it's very competitive. And also the agility, the understanding of what agile means is not really well understood and used as an excuse for doing things without much attention paid to the quality of it. So the speed was very important, and competitiveness made it hard to deliver the quality that was perceived as desired. And number 7, no, sorry, that will be number 8 now. Wanting to be part of the hype was perceived as a reason why the leaders and members of staff tolerated it. So yeah, one of the reasons one of the things that were perceived as why it's so toxic there was that it's tolerated, and it's tolerated because especially in the prestigious organizations or companies, people wanted to have it as part of their CV, and this experience, and also to be part of something bigger. So even at the expense of their own health, they would still stick around and keep going. And number 9 was that the top leadership was perceived as wanting glory and money. And also it was perceived that it's more important to show up in front of each other rather than for the company to succeed. So the individual leaders, they were more interested in their own, in how they are perceived and what they can get from certain behaviors, and the final goal of the organization or of that team was not really that important. And number 10 was that in big organizations, it was very easy to just keep going as usual, even if there was high turnover, even if mistakes were made. It was just, it didn't have that much of an impact on the money coming in, and it was possible to do, for the leader to do whatever they felt like, because they felt untouchable, and they knew that because of that prestige, people will keep coming. So that was the perception, that because of the size and prestige, it's hard to do anything against it.
This is very interesting. And you and I have also talked about these points before. So just some questions. Something that really stuck out at me is the leaders and the fact that there is a lack of governance within the organizations. And I'm saying this because when I was coming of age, I had people tell me, a company isn't a democracy. Companies, you do have to listen to the hierarchy and you don't really get a vote. That being said, a leader or a manager in another organization does have some checks and balances. They do have general processes that they also have to adhere to. What was off in these organizations, do you think, that really let these managers be able to be toxic to their employees, or at least create an atmosphere where toxic people could thrive?
Well, here I think we're getting at the core of the issue with the data teams and the data environment. So it seems from these interviews, I gathered that data teams are there to find out the truth, to do research, to bring quality to product, to show what is lying underneath the surface, and it's they are put in the organizations for that very purpose. And it seemed that it was not a genuine effort, actually. So it seemed people had that impression that they are not really, it's not desired for them to bring the truth to the surface. And I think it was not desirable in those organizations to shed the light on some of the issues that came out through that research. That's why, that's why there was toxicity was allowed in this sense, because there was this perception of anger at the data that was coming out. So that's why people felt like they cannot really, their work is going to waste, because if there was something that they brought up to the surface and it was not satisfactory, oftentimes it was meant to be either hidden or changed. It was not desired. So I think in those companies, the process was to kind of skip over that hurdle and not necessarily pay too much attention to it.
And then you and I had talked about how some data people in your study were a little bit frustrated that the appearance of the data was very much talked about, maybe not the more technical issues. And this is something that really struck a chord with me, because as a data leader, I did really care about how usable and understandable the data products were to non-technical, non-data specialists who I was working with and who my team was working with. And that actually is so important for job stability of the data teams. Also, because a data product that is used by other people will also be considered valuable, and the people creating those products will be kept employed also in times of cuts. So for me, when I heard about this, it was okay. I get that it might not be the most interesting thing for some people to hear about, the usability or how something looks. But what is the difference, though, between a feedback that's coming from maybe a toxic place and a feedback that's genuinely trying to improve the adoption of the data products within an organization?
So feedback that is toxic is not focusing on the problem itself. It usually focuses around the person who delivered the task. So it blames, it kind of touches on their personal attributes. The mistake is not explained in terms of, okay, this is what we need as a result. This is what went wrong. There is no proper analysis of that issue. So it attacks the person rather than the task that they were undertaking. And indeed, in this example, what was coming up was those silos and lack of communication, because the data person or the team was not clear on what exactly is meant to be the end product of what they are doing. And then we were talking about being requested to do corrections, which they found either very superficial and unnecessary. So yeah, these two, when they came together, there were I perceived from people this frustration that was around the fact that they have done their job correctly, they delivered what was asked of them, and suddenly they're being bombarded with requests and implied accusations that they are not competent in the job they are doing because something doesn't look good, or something is not as it was expected but never communicated. So so the difference between these two is just the communication, really, and what is the focus of this feedback and how it is delivered, and how are you trying to make people understand the required or desired outcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue because I have to tell you that usability is close to my heart in data. Okay, but then moving on to another issue I found really important, and that's the prestige issue, the being part of the hype, the perceived unlimited access to labor, to highly skilled labor, is an extremely potent and a really surprising driver of this. Just because we're living in a time of, Fachkräftemangel, the shortage of highly skilled workers in Germany, but a lot of the people who were working in Germany in a lot of these professions that are in a perceived shortage here in Germany are also saying that they felt that they were sort of treated like water, that they could, that the leadership didn't care if they quit or if they were fired, because there's always going to be more. And this is something that's really surprising, I think, and very surprising to the audience, maybe. Where did this come from?
Well, my suspicion, and within this sample, majority of the respondents, not all, but majority, were foreign workers. So they were not from the country where we live. They were not in the country, they were not working in the country that they come from. And I think part of the problem here, this threat of, if you go, there will be plenty others in your place, was also related to that fact that some of them were dependent on a visa, some of them were dependent on staying in the role for a longer period of time because of social insurance that they were dependent on in case of unemployment. So I think this kind of threat was connected also to the fact that it was foreign workers who are usually perceived as not knowing exactly their rights, or being in a more desperate, so to say, situation and needing to keep the job for their security and survival. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. And another point that you talked about was teams of females in your study, right? These were teams of females who had male bosses, who the perception was that they were not being empathetic to the needs of the females in terms of family responsibilities. And, this is also maybe those males were not in families where the males also had such responsibilities, because it is important to say that men also have family responsibilities, but we're talking about specific individuals here.
Yes, no, we're not talking about specific individuals. And in my research, there has been both sides of the male issue, the problems of men when they are raising a family, and how they tie it together with a workplace, and how to divide the time, and how employer reacts to this. So definitely it's not just that women have families and they are not understood, but in this sample, within the data community, in the qualitative research field, it was very visible that yes, the male supervisors were not only not empathetic, but they were also often, and actually this came in the qualitative data as well, they were not fully competent in the data collection, or they were supervising teams of people who they didn't really know what they were doing exactly. So that was also a problem with the feedback, that oftentimes it seemed or was perceived as not relevant to the job that was being done. So and yeah, indeed, often in the qualitative field, it was majority men who got promoted into the leadership roles and then managed the female colleagues without properly paying attention to their needs. But in the qualitative data as well, and especially in those prestigious big organizations, it was quite, the sexual harassment element was higher than in the smaller companies. So here there was the experiences of women working with men in power, also not as positive as, relatively more negative than in the smaller companies as well.
Wow, that's really surprising. And we didn't talk about non-binary people. I'm not sure if they were in your sample, but if they would have been in your sample, I'm sure we would have heard other experiences as well. There's a lot more to be delved into here.
Yeah, definitely. And because I did qualitative research, I didn't ask many personal questions, also because there was meant to be an anonymous contribution, and I focused mostly on experiences. But there was, there was no deeper analysis of this type. It was very, binary.
So just moving on to what is maybe in my mind, and what maybe a lot of our audience is wondering, why do people stay in these roles? I mean, if it's really difficult, if you're getting overworked, maybe abused, maybe sexually harassed, why do you stay? You guys have skill sets that are in high demand. Why just not go? There must be so many companies lining up to hire data people, right? And then why do the companies put up with this too? Because there is burnout. This is not without cost to the company. There is poor quality work, right? So let's start. Why do the individuals stay?
Well, that's a very bright spectrum of reasons. And like I said, there is this element of people being foreign and having to hold on to a job. There is also an element, some of the respondents, they came from a different background. So they were educated in a different field and then kind of walked into the job through an additional training or on top of their original or the first degree that they had or work experience that they had. So they were kind of starting out in a new career. And for this reason, also they didn't have the full kind of understanding of how well am I doing really, because I have never done it in a proper job before yet. I am now starting off. I am not a beginner in the world of work, but I am a beginner in this specific field. So there was this type of insecurity. But after a while of working in such an environment, also those who had a data background, educational background, and previous work experiences, they also ended up questioning their own skill set and their own ability to do the job properly. And they were staying, so like I said, also the prestige part and wanting to be part of the hype. So if they joined a big startup that was now scaling up and it was quite a big deal, they didn't want to change jobs. There were people who wanted to make sure that they get their shares, because you after a certain amount of time working for that company, you then get your investment back, or you get money for working there. So it's very a wide variety of reasons. Visa, that was a big issue, people wanting to stay. And just stability of the CV, because it was also in the qualitative data. People would change jobs quite often because it was such a competitive space and the speed was really high. So for the stability of their CV, they didn't want to be seen as someone who is difficult to work with. They didn't want to be seen as that they cannot keep a job, although it was affecting their health. They tried to stick around as long as possible so that it looks good on their CV.
So then I have a question about this, because the sticking with a job or going to an organization whose work atmosphere is not maybe the best, this is not new. I remember when I was in business school, people would go to investment banks and consulting companies, and they knew they were going to work long hours in competitive environments. And this has been around for many decades, this thought, but they would have it on their CV and it would be a nest egg for them later on in their career. So, I'm thinking, what's the difference here? And as you were speaking, I was thinking, well, maybe it's that for what I just said with these business schools, that was a very linear path. A lot of people go to business schools from different backgrounds, but once you go to the business school, you go to the consulting companies. It's somewhat of a tried and true, pretty prestigious path. Maybe here, I'm just trying to understand the difference here, what makes here, that much different. Is it different than what I said, or is it that people are coming here with maybe some, upskilled courses and learning more on the job, having less stable living situations than the business school elite people that I just talked about? Or are there similarities, actually?
So the question is if why, like, if
what is so specific about this data scale-up startup environment, and also the qualitative environment, because it's not new that people go to these organizations to get something on their CV or something.
Yeah, that's true. What I found different, interviewing different people from different industries, what I found different about the data people was the focus on the quality of the work, because it was so tangible. It's all in numbers. It's all the point is to show evidence and to show results of measuring certain things. And so people are very detail oriented and very accurate. And this is their what the job description is as well. And then finding that it's not desired, it kind of brought up more frustration, I guess. I think from the business side of things, you walk into it and you know there will be different things thrown at you. You know, you have to navigate the field in some ways. You learn many different management methods and negotiating and all these things, how to communicate. And then data is very it's meant to be very straightforward and self-evident, and that's the whole point of this department. So I think also on a greater scale, it's our understanding or growing understanding of mental health and how work impacts it. So yeah, before always people going to business schools go with the understanding that it will be a stressful job, that there will be a lot they have to deal with and juggle at the same time. But even there, we can see that people are more and more aware of the fact that their health will pay the price for too much at the same time. So I think right now, also post-COVID, there is a whole change of the way we are perceiving work and what it's worth and what it is that we should be paying attention to. So that also being interviewing data people who are, as I said, very detail oriented and base their decisions in the information they receive. They're very analytical. I think recognizing this has also contributed to that, if that answers the question.
Yes, definitely. It definitely does. Sometimes as the decades go forward, society gets a little bit smarter and we are getting a lot more savvy about mental health, and also people are being more vocal about the impact it actually has on them. And I think that that is a difference. And I think you said that also the data people really see their work as a craft, and they feel that the craft might not be lived out in the organization the way that they expected it to be. And maybe in consulting and investment banking, it's more lived out. Could be.
Yeah.
But why do the companies put up with this? Put up with toxic leadership? This is a big question in my mind, because this is not without cost.
Yeah.
This is not something that adds to any sort of competitive advantage.
So
right?
in the
if
short
you're
term,
losing your people.
yes, but sometimes in the short term it does, because it kind of, before people burn out, before people recognize that, okay, this environment, we are not just saving one-off situation or fighting with fire and then we have a stable work life, but it's a constant thing that is happening. Before people catch up with what is going on, they work very hard and they deliver results, and those leaders make it possible for a year or two for people to exceed expectations. So I think companies tolerate it because it, in the short term, it can deliver excellent results. In the long term, people get sick, people get demotivated, there is a knowledge loss, know-how loss, there is high turnover, and especially with data, that it's a big cost to pay. It's a big price to pay when people go and projects change. So that was also another thing that came through the research, was that a lot of the time projects would start and then they would end, and then something else would begin and they would have to go back to something. So there was a massive mess and chaos in the data that was being collected. Projects were starting but not finishing, so a lot of work was put into something and never finished. And I think the longer such situation stays, of course it will have a negative impact also on the companies and what they bring out into the world. And if, as we talked about earlier, if the managers are focusing more about showing each other up and who is who is winning points in front of the top leader rather than trying to deliver together on the mission and vision, then the company is not delivering on what they were set off to deliver, and that department of data, which is meant to be supporting the delivery of those goals, is also just realizing after a while that their work is going nowhere.
Okay, so it's, getting through that month or getting through that big presentation and really that big push, but the big push is all the time.
Yes,
And so
exactly.
actually toxic leadership is very effective in exceeding expectations in the big push. So if you keep doing that, and you do have an infinite amount of people, there is unfortunately, some economic upside to it.
Well, you know what? So here's the thing about toxic leadership. It has to be consistent. So one push, when you have one situation or one period of time when there is a lot of pressure and you need people to get going, that doesn't necessarily mean you are a toxic leader. But if you continue doing this, if this is your modus operandi, how you get things done, how you manage people, how you motivate them. If you motivate people by fear and by pressure and constantly threatening them that they will lose their job unless they exceed expectations, and then without even clear expectations, that is toxic. So toxic is when it's consistent and if it's I lost the word. Consistent and never mind. The point is that it's on purpose. So you do it because you know that people will move faster, that they will listen to you, that they will do what you tell them to do, and you can keep that level of control. So it's also about being in control. I mean, with toxicity, you have different personalities that do it, and they use different types of measures or tools to achieve their goals. So whatever they find in you that can work, they will use it against you. So so I would say toxic leadership works in short term, but it's not toxic leadership if it just happens very occasionally and you just have to step on it. Yeah.
So most people think toxic leadership is bad. Okay. So how could companies actually do something about it? Because the truth is that it is very bad for employee health. And in the long run, you do get attrition. You do have less quality work. You have many more health and safety and information security incidents coming up. So there is a big downside to this that we could, that's worth a whole other episode.
Yeah.
But, just let's give some light at the end of the tunnel. What can companies do to make a healthier environment?
Well, first of all, they should recruit differently. There is a whole issue of how we measure success and how we measure performance. So people who are being promoted or being recruited are assessed on certain skill set, on certain characteristics, which are not evident of good leadership. So there has to be more emotional intelligence factored in there. It has to be measured. It has to be measured what motivates people and do they actually like other people? Because now people get into a leadership position for the higher pay, for the recognition, for being the manager, but or because they are very good at a specific, they are a very good individual contributor. And that doesn't mean that they manage people well. And a managerial role is about people. So first of all, you have to recruit correctly. Second of all, you have to promote the right people to managerial roles. And also the leadership has to be very clear on what they tolerate and what they don't tolerate, because they're, of course, companies, they have to put out values out there into the world so that they are perceived in a positive light, but these values have to be lived. So how they can improve toxic environments is not tolerate toxicity. If you say you're inclusive, be inclusive. If diversity is one of your values, make sure that you are truly diverse. And the same for, lifelong learning, all of it. And then with specific companies and specific teams, there is no one solution fits all. You have to know the people you're working with. You have to know what it is that motivates them. You have to know what problems they are facing. You have to be interested, and you have to invest time and money in people. So it really is about taking seriously that the whole department of people and culture, just taking people as people seriously, not just as a resource, as tools to achieving a goal. But when you're working with people, you just have to pay attention to that human element. And you can reduce a lot of toxicity by just listening and reacting to what you hear, because that's another problem. People ask for feedback, they receive feedback, and they do nothing about it. So, and that's another thing with data. They receive the data, they can see something is off, and they then decide, okay, no, but this person has been on the team for so long, they have so much knowledge, so much expertise, I will not be removing them, even though they are very disruptive and damaging to the whole environment, work environment. So it's about being ready to invest time, money, and effort into creating a healthy work environment. And that starts with recruitment, promotion, and who you keep and who you fire.
I think one thing maybe about promotion, because people are going to naturally want more money, more responsibility. It's, I guess some part of human nature, but maybe it's how you get that, because currently most companies just have a management path, maybe having a much more technical expert path as well, where you could get that too, so that people who maybe don't have the proclivity to love people. It's not only about loving people, but who are not, more people who might, be maybe less inclined to be empathetic and, try to use, the human resources for the good of the company, but also in an empathetic and sustainable way. Maybe other people could, get the higher pay scales through more technical focused work. I think that's one path.
For sure. I also agree. I don't think that the only way to earn more should be through managing other people. I think the expertise element without the management role should also be taken into account, for sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And how could people get in contact with you, and how could they, learn more about toxic leadership?
Right now on LinkedIn, we are just finalizing the website where we will be presenting the results of the research that I've been doing over the past months. It's an ongoing research, so that website will be growing, and data that we have there will be growing as well, and that will be the best place to contact us. But before this happens, definitely on LinkedIn. And there for now.
Hey, great. And we're going to have a follow-up session. Am I a toxic leader? Because it's one thing to say it's the other people, but it's also, let's be introspective and try to see what we could do to improve our own environment. So stay tuned and click around to see if you could find that video also on the YouTube channel. And stay tuned also for more D3M Labs research about the digital economy and the working conditions for data people. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Time.